Celtics Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
What's up, everyone? Welcome in. New edition of Celtics Beat. And, well, if this were, I guess, like, I don't know if anyone watched the show Friends back when that was on for a decade. Pretty popular. I think you've heard of it. They used to organize all of their shows. They used to individually title each episode and be like, the one where this, the one where that, everyone was the one where. So if we did that here on this show, this would be the one where the Celtics are still better than the Knicks and the Timberwolves. So we're going to talk about a trade involving Karl Anthony Towns and Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo as well. A lot of good stuff. But hey, media day, it's behind us. Training camp, it is underway. A trip to Dubai right around the corner. I have no idea if our guest here, Adam Himmelsbach, is making that trip, but I do know that he went to Paris for the Olympics. So he's a world traveler as it is. Adam, welcome in, bud. How are you?
Good, man. So I am going, and
Nice.
It's not Dubai. It's Abu Dhabi. Two different places.
Is it?
They're 100 miles apart.
Oh, that's pretty close.
Yeah,
That's important. It wasn't like, yeah, so that's 3 continents over, Adam.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're in the right vicinity. But yeah, no, it'll be my first time there. I'm flying out on Monday.
Nice. So
Actually,
all right, well,
what do you guys think about
important.
this? I just paid $190 of my own money, not to get reimbursed, to ensure it's a 14-hour flight. It was $190 to ensure that the seat next to me will be empty.
Really?
Money well spent. Money
That's what
well spent. Absolutely.
I
How
felt
has
good
nobody
about it.
corrected me on this, on the location of these games until now? Like, how long have I been saying Dubai? It takes a real journalist to come on and be like, as a matter of fact, I mean, look, 100 miles significant. I could leave this state in 100 miles easily. See?
Yeah, it's Abu Dhabi, which has been described to me as Dubai is, I guess, the more Las Vegas-y one. Abu Dhabi is a little more low-key. It's how people have said it, but I have no idea.
Is it like the for Hawaii people? Is it like the Kauai as compared to, Maui, something like that?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know any Hawaii comps.
It's a little more chill. I thought we were just naming extravagant places. All right, it's great to have you here with us. We do need to talk about that trade that, I think sort of shook the NBA world here in the offseason a little bit. It's an interesting trade for both teams. I'm a little bit conflicted in terms of how I feel about it and with regard to, how much it really necessarily helped either team. So definitely want both of your perspectives on that. I know there were a lot of opinions on social media, a lot of, I don't know, kind of, it feels strong to say heartbroken Knicks fans, but there were a lot of Knicks fans on social media that were in their feelings after this trade. I think sorry to see Julius Randle go as someone that helped put them where they are, even if he is not the star of the show anymore. So all of those things, like I said, on the way. But let's get into, you've been writing, for anyone that hasn't seen Adam's articles of late, obviously, subscribe to, get behind the paywall there in the Boston Globe, or read him in the actual newspaper, or, check out people aggregating him on social media. Do whatever you want to do. But either way, he's been out there. He's been busy. He's been writing about Jaylen Brown's offseason. Baylor Shireman, of course, one of the newest members of the Celtics, media camp, or I should say media day takeaways. And I think sort of the biggest takeaway is something that you and I, we were texting about before the show, which is just that there's not a lot. It's an unusual time to be covering the Celtics compared to past years, because there was always that hurdle, always that, how do we get to step X, climb over hump Y, whatever you want to call it. And now they've done it. They've reached the promised land. They've achieved all of their dreams as a franchise. And now it's okay, reset. How do we do it again? All the while, obviously, you have some of the stuff in the background, the looming ownership sale, the Porzingis injury and when is he going to be back? Players looking for motivation from different things that happen in their off seasons that we've spent so much time on this show talking about. What were your big takeaways from talking to these guys during the annual I'm in the best shape of my life day?
It's added 10 pounds of muscle season. That's what it, and Baylor Shireman actually said it. I remember turning to some of the writers. I'm like, am I going to do the put on 10 pounds of muscle story? I think I have to. It's like, I used to cover the NFL. That was always the thing too. Oh yeah, I had 30 pounds of muscle. I'm like, your season ended like 3 months ago. Like where does your 30 pounds of muscle just instantly appearing from? But yeah, no, it's like you said, it's very calm. There's no, the angst is obviously gone. There's no, how are we going to do this? What went wrong? But really the biggest difference at this start of the year is there's no change. It's just all the same players. It's all the same people. Like the Celtics have been good, basically really good for basically a decade, give or take. But almost every year there's been like a significant change, whether it be whatever, Drew Holiday and Porzingis last year to Joe Mazzulla becoming coach the year before that, then you go back to like whatever. You can go down the list. Al Horford arrives, Kyrie Irving arrives, Gordon Hayward arrives, one year after another, these big top 3 draft picks arrive. This is just like the same group that was just completed one of the most dominant seasons in NBA history with the same coach, the same players, and they're just going to go do it again, basically, is their plan. So they're, as far as storylines, there's not much right now. But if you're a Celtics fan, you don't care because you have a team that's favored to win another NBA championship.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to look at some of the quotes that are coming out about, what's different, even though there's, again, all the same crew here. How is Joe different? How different are practices and everything? Like that's one of the things where I think this is difficult for a lot of people, but especially for a guy in Joe Mazzulla who's in his 3rd year as a head coach. Like, okay, now you've won the NBA championship. Now you got to find a different way to motivate these guys, right? You got to find different ways to keep this crew engaged. And I think some of the quotes that are coming out, Lonnie Walker is a little different in terms of that story. I've never met anybody like Joe Mazzulla. I tried to ask him if he's going to see one of the boxing fights that's coming up, and he said, I don't like pillow fights or whatever he just said. Like it was a great quote. So, in where you're sitting, Adam, how are people trying to make things different and trying to keep this crew from getting complacent? Because sometimes when you've risen to the mountaintop and you've accomplished the hardest thing you've needed to accomplish in your career, sometimes it's like, all right, maybe, you take a step back and you ease up a little bit. How is everybody trying to keep that competition, that fiery feeling going?
Yeah, I think that kind of remains to be seen. But one thing that has become very clear this week, and this is really a Joe Mazzulla directive, and you hear it talking to players, you hear it talking to him in press conferences, even off to the side, and we're just kind of BSing with him a little bit. They are not all in on this idea of defending a title and repeating as champions. They want to separate from that completely. This is a new season and a new team, and their goal is to win a championship. And they don't want to relate it at all to last year and the challenges of doing it again. And no one's done it since the Warriors. They're trying to block that out completely. And they've made that very clear these first few days. I'm not sure necessarily the primary reason behind it. Maybe it's just like an extra distraction. Joe is a big narrative guy. It sets this narrative of, oh, can they be the first? Can they do this? We're like, no, we're just here to win a championship this year. We're not worried about what happened in the past. But that's been the biggest take so far from me.
Do you think, obviously, like the person I'm going to mention, not the first person by any means in sports coaching history to think this way, but, for 20 years, that was very much a Bill Belichickism. One year does not roll over into the next. Every year is its own entity, and you reset and you restart the clock and all of that stuff. And, obviously, Mazzulla being a Rhode Islander and a New England local, I'm sure, at least to some degree, a Patriots fan, maybe even a diehard one. I have no idea, but someone that, has spent time down there, probably got to know Bill on some level before his exodus. Do you think it comes from that a little bit and just sort of the way the Patriots carried themselves?
It's possible. I don't get that sense though. To me, it feels like Joe is always very aware of finding any little thing that could cause added pressure or added distraction. And if a player feels a little ounce of extra pressure to try to do it again, he doesn't want them to feel that. He wants them to just feel like they're here to be a really good basketball team together and try to win championship together, not think about becoming the first team since the Warriors to win 2 in a row. Not thinking about, why aren't you doing this that you did last year so well? What's going on? He wants this to be a standalone season. And I think that's going to be, Joe is you've seen it, he's a big themes guy. There's things he hits throughout a season. It feels like that's going to be a common theme, especially early. He's going to be asked, whatever. National media will come in. It's going to be questioned. Like, obviously, they didn't have any like losing streaks last year, but when they do, why? How's this compare to when you guys made the run past the Mavericks? Oh, how's this compare? And he's going to shut that down. At some point, he'll shut down comps to last year, I think, pretty quickly.
Something that Evan and what we've been talking on the show, obviously, it's a lot of like summer filler, right? Leading up to the season or even leading up to this point, quite frankly, where the guys are back and talking again. And there were a lot of things that, especially Olympic driven or, Tatum not winning finals MVP, which, he's been pretty vocal recently about wanting to win one of those at some point and being fairly certain that he's going to. There's no lack of confidence and bravado there, and that's fine. There's no criticism of that. But, we've been talking a lot about this quest to win again. And we can say it, Joe, sorry. For you, in your mind, other than injury, because injury is unpredictable, what does trip them up? What is something that, as you look around the rest of the league and the Celtics coming off of what was truly in many ways an historic year? I mean, just absolutely demolished the league. Regular season, steamrolled in the playoffs. I mean, there were, like the Pacers series was competitive game to game, but it was still a sweep. Like the Celtics were never really pushed last year in the way that obviously past Celtics teams have been, past champions have been. So what this year is the thing that makes them stumble a little, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you mentioned injuries. That's the most obvious one. But aside from that, I think it would be the rest of the league existing, kind of. Like, I know Celtics fans don't want to hear this, but there were other teams that were hardly at full strength, and teams have gotten better this summer. Celtics didn't really have a big need to get a lot better, but other teams did, and I feel like they got better. So there could be new challenges there. And then within their roster, there's not many weak spots, but you could say, like, hey, what if this is the year Al Horford finally gets old? What if this is where it shows? Whatever. Drew Holiday's going to be 35 this year. What if Drew takes a step back? Like, this is no longer the team for all those years. Oh, they're so young, they're up and coming. Like, they're starting to at least get toward that. Some of the guys, Derek White's 30. Like, they're still young, but it's a different phase where it's possible. I would say there's a world where that would start creeping in a little bit. I don't see that happening, but if you're trying to identify things, that would be one.
Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Over 5 million active members. It's a big number, and for good reason. Prize Picks, it's the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's you against the numbers. That's it. All you do, you pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings just simply roll in.
Prize Picks is getting you ready for this football season with a slam dunk offer for the entire month of September, folks. Caleb Williams, Bears quarterback, #1 pick. All he's got to do is notch 1 passing yard in any game the entire month of September. Just one, Kaufman. Just one. That's it.
Any game in September, 1 passing yard.
Use that pick with any other combination of stat projections to start building your bank account today.
All right, well, Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups, they stay in play even if one of your players does get injured. If your player leaves in the first half, doesn't return, Prize Picks, well, they keep your picks still alive, which is a wonderful thing, obviously. Download the Prize Picks apps today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Get $50 instantly when you play just $5. Code CLNS on Prize Picks. Again, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to receive to win to receive the $50 bonus. You just get it by playing that $5. I mean, truly, find me a better deal. I'm not sure you can. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Speaking of health, one of the biggest things to come out of media day was the health surrounding Kristaps Porzingis. There seems to be a little bit of optimism surrounding his return to the Celtics. I mean, I think a lot of us originally were looking, 2025, probably January, February, somewhere in there for him to get ramped up, to normal playing time and getting him back into playing shape, so to speak. Brad spoke earlier and said that it's possible that he's coming back earlier than that, and his progress has been pretty, I would say either at schedule or slightly ahead of schedule. Have you been able to uncover anything more about his timeline and when they expect him back?
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have noticed over the years, the Celtics are not big timeline people. They hate putting him out because then once a guy doesn't reach it, it's like, oh, setback. They're like, no. So they either don't do timelines or they do big timelines. And it looks like they came back earlier than they really did when in their head, they knew that was the long end of a timeline. So that's what it kind of sounds like is happening here. He's doing well. Like he said, he's already started contact workouts. He's on the court again, but there's really no rush, right? Like they're going to be one of the top 3 seeds in the East. If he probably doesn't play a game this year, if we're being honest, they want, like anything else, like they're going to be careful with Al again. I'm sure Al's not playing back-to-backs. I bet his minutes are down even a bit from last year, but they feel good about the other guys they have. Like, they feel good about Xavier Tillman, Luke Cornett, Neemias Queta. Like they have other guys that they're eager to see what they can bring, and also eager to get them valuable opportunities because, again, you never know when you might need them. Who knows when you need Xavier to hit a big 3 in a finals game. Then you bring Kristaps back whenever he's ready. Like if he's, let's say he's ready December 15th. Like let's say he's totally ready. My guess is he comes back like 2 weeks after that, to err on the major side of caution.
Well, and to that end, like I've been saying, Ev, I've been saying on this show for 3 months or 2 months, whatever it's been, that, we've known Porzingis was going to miss considerable time. Don't be at all surprised if you don't see this guy until 2025, just because, to your point, what's the rush? What's the need? The playoffs are the focus. They're not going to care about their seed or anything like that. They've been there. They know what it takes. This group is capable of accomplishing it. Health in April matters and beyond, obviously. Prior to that, you figure it out, you get through. So if Porzingis, as you alluded to, is, let's say, ready on the earlier end, obviously nobody's going to be pushing him back. It might even be the opposite. It might be so conservative that it's like, why don't you, sort of take your time. But for him and the way he's wired, is he going to be itching to get back out? Is he going to be someone that's like, is he going to be pushing for December 1, let's say, when the organization be perfectly comfortable with Christmas?
The answer to that is, yeah. Did you see the finals last year? Like the only reason he played in that game 5 is because he basically was like, I'm playing tonight. And once it was determined you can't make things worse.
That was the finals. I mean, this is the regular season.
No, I understand. But he was like hurt then. Like he hadn't had surgery yet. He was injured. He was in pain. Like that's not the case now. So that's his mindset. He wants to be on the court. He said it does at media day. He said, I'm not going to quote him directly, but it was along the lines of, if it's up to me, I'd be out there like really soon. But he also understands the situation. It's not a situation where he's going to push back or make a stink about it. But of course, like the second they say, all right, you're just about ready, he's going to want to be out on the court. The other part of it is like, look, this is a guy, a lot of them have been fluky and bad happenstance, but he's had a lot of injuries during his career. So you kind of delay that, bring him back, whatever, January. In a weird way, you're kind of keeping him preserving him a little longer, essentially, for what, like you said, for what really matters.
Kaufman, I don't know, and maybe this is our fault, because we've had so much time to talk about all the, like you mentioned earlier, it's the summer, we just started, it's like filler, you know what I mean? Doing a lot of filler for the past couple of months. Did we make a big enough deal about Porzingis's ability to play through some significant pain and like really contribute in Game 5? Because like you think about,
I mean, we did at the time for sure. I don't know. I don't know if there's been a summer celebration of Porzingis.
Well, we still talk about the bloody sock game like it happened, yesterday, and that was literally, 20 years ago. You have like one of my favorite storylines, like Logan Mankins played on a torn ACL like all year, right, for the Patriots, right? Like, where does he rank in this? Like, it just popped in my head. Like, where does he rank in this pantheon of Boston athletes that have sacrificed legitimate pain and suffering to just for the greater good and win a title here? I don't know if we've dedicated time to that.
Like, feel free to disagree, obviously, but to me, and I said this at the time, the Celtics beat the Mavericks with or without Porzingis. So I don't think it's we're not anywhere close to like the bloody sock level or anything like that. But at the same time, I will readily admit that when he returned, that first game in that first quarter, just as a tone setter and the importance of that moment and, the energy in the building and all of that, like, yeah, that was incredibly significant. I mean, that, you could say it further pushed things in the Celtics direction. Absolutely. But even if it never happened, I think we're still talking about, banner 18 in the rear view.
I think that's a good point. It's, to me, the bigger return is coming back from the calf strain more than after the ankle for game 5. That was, like you said, set the tone for the series. The energy when he got out onto the court was insane. And then he just what are you going to get from him? And he just dominated the game, like just took over. And you're like, okay, these guys are going to be fine.
Yeah, I started seeing somebody reposted a video of him coming out of the tunnel recently, that game 1, and how just like the boom that happened when he
the Willis Reed moment.
Yeah, it's people are like, it felt like a wrestling, like in lieu, like, obviously topically with the McMahon documentary coming out, it felt like a wrestling moment where like the guy's coming out from the back and like The Rock or Stone Cold like hits the Titantron right at the beginning, and you have that boom where everybody goes nuts. Like the footage
That's
from
what they were going for. That's definitely what they were going for.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it worked, boys. I think it worked.
And we're powered by Game Time. Football season, it's here. Don't let people tell you football season's coming, because listen, the college football season, that is, literally days away. And the NFL season, that is beginning September 5th. It is right around the corner. The time to start planning is coming up. The season with our friends over at Game Time, a great opportunity to get out to games, obviously. Game Time is a new feature. It is called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams, like the Patriots, for instance, play live so easy. So incredibly easy, Ev. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, okay? Shows you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so many other places that you get bogged down. Game Time, it just makes things so easy.
Yeah, my favorite part, I was scrolling through it the other day, and I was like, this is what's really great is sometimes you have a significant other at home, Adam. Some of us do as well. And sometimes you look at your significant other and say, what do you want to do today? Because I don't know. What do you want to do today? Well, guess what? Game Time has something for you. You can be a little spontaneous. Get a little inspiration from Game Time. Let them help you with their This Weekend tab. Scroll through and find some events that are, around your area. They'll give you the price of everything. You can grab your tickets and have them right on your phone out of the house. It only takes a few minutes for you to do so, and curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. All of it is shown up front. No surprise fees at checkouts, which is my least favorite thing about buying tickets anywhere. And then you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, Kaufman. It's just way easier.
Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Use Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS. Again, that is code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code. It is CLNS, $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. Let's get back to the show. So as far as like you mentioned before, Himmelsbach, the like what potentially trips up the Celtics or what gets in their way of we got to get used to saying banner 19 now, the existence of the rest of the league and what other teams have done to try and get on the Celtics level or get closer, narrow the gap, whatever it may be. Obviously, the Knicks, who I have the utmost respect for. I mean, I thought that a Celtics-Knicks playoff series last year would have been incredible had we gotten it. And, Indiana was able to squeak it out, obviously, and knock off the Knicks. But that I was as injury ravaged as New York was at the time. I still thought, Boston was going to win in my mind, but I still thought you'd get a fight, you'd get a series, Brunson and the way those guys are wired, and they're mentally tough and physically they'll bang you around and all of that. They've mixed it up a little bit here. Now, Randall, obviously, one of those guys that was not healthy at the time. He's out of the picture. You have Karl Anthony Towns come in. I think this is really interesting. My initial blush of this trade, and Dante DiVincenzo is, some people are saying, well, it's a sell high moment, on him. Maybe. I think he's a really solid player. I'd even put a poll out on Twitter just for funsies. Like, if you're a Celtics fan, you could have any one of the three guys that were involved in that trade. Who would you be? And it sort of restored my faith in humanity that people didn't just immediately flock to the name. It like the leading vote getter was DiVincenzo, and not Towns, not Randall. And I just thought that was awesome because I wholeheartedly agree with it, which is why I put the poll out. I wanted to see if people were on the same wavelength, the same page as me with that. But my initial blush, and I want both of your opinions of that trade, was I felt like it was the Knicks admitting that Randall's not a good fit there. I felt like it was the Timberwolves admitting that as far as what Towns gives you, you've hit a ceiling, and that he and Edwards aren't a perfect match. And we're just going to try something different. And maybe it is win-win. Maybe it doesn't make either team exponentially better. Seems like the social media reaction was very pro. This is awesome for the Timberwolves. What Adam, obviously starting with you. I mean, how did you see it, and where does it take us in terms of teams that are trying to compete with Boston?
So some social media reaction is awesome from the Timberwolves. Like a lot of those, I feel like are Celtics fan. Like whenever it's the team that's like your rival in your division, the first reaction, oh, that was a horrible deal for them. Like if you're going social, I actually like it for the Knicks. I think it's a good move. You know, who knows, right? Like who knows how it's all going to shake out. But to add a 7-footer who shoots above 40% from three, can space the floor for Jalen Brunson. You know, when Mitchell Robinson comes back from his injury, can play alongside him at 4. I like the move. Like, I think, you know, people like, oh, you know, DiVincenzo and Randall, like I said, Randall was kind of a clunky fit. They were probably going to be trading him somewhere. Was there a deal really anywhere where you're going to get a player back who's better than Karl Towns? Probably not. And I always make this comp when there's like a 2-for-1 deal. Like, I don't know if you guys collected baseball cards when you were a kid, but like whenever you trading with your buddy, like, all right, I'll give you these 3 guys for your 1 guy. 3, I'm giving you 3 cards. Yeah, deal. Like that's all well and good. So like those minutes go somewhere. So like, is the gap from Dante DiVincenzo to like Deuce McBride so massive? Now Deuce McBride just gets some more minutes. Okay, we've upgraded Julius Randle to Karl Towns. Maybe downgrade a little bit here. I think the ultimate upgrade is worth it for the Knicks. We'll see. Like nobody knows, but I think it's a smart trade.
It's something that they're trying something different. Again, Randall is a weird fit kind of with that team. And it's kind of been one of the off-season things that we've poked at, right? If you're, trying to create content, it's like, okay, what do you do with Randall here? This is a team that doesn't look like he fits into with OG, with, again, the Nova Knicks, with Brunson and, with Bridges, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Does he come off the bench? Like, what happens here? So Randall gets to go somewhere where he'll probably come off the bench. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's great for Minnesota because I think by losing Karl Towns, that means more Naz Reid, and I think that's really great for the Timberwolves. I really think they should be playing Naz Reid more anyway. So I think they're going to stumble into that, which is great. But it doesn't really affect the Celtics that much unless they meet in the finals. Meanwhile, the Knicks, again, I get the idea of it. This has been sort of an idea that's been kicked around for a while because of the Leon Rose connection here in Worldwide West and just the connection they have with all the Kentucky guys that are around the NBA, whether it be Devin Booker or, name your favorite Kentucky player. It seems like a lot of them have been tied to the Knicks at some point. And so they go out and get Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, I'm curious to see what he looks like with Brunson and with a Robinson behind him, very similar to Gobert, that can clean up a lot of the junk. He can certainly space the floor. I just don't think Karl-Anthony Towns is a particularly smart player. Especially when it comes to his foul habits. Like, he fouls all the time. And sometimes in games you can just kind of see him disengage. And I don't think the Knicks fans are happy with guys that do that. I mean, Julius Randle did that all the time. And the Knicks fans got on him for that. Now, Randle's able to kind of clean up his image. We'll see if Towns can do that. That's a huge salary number with Towns. I'm not the biggest cat guy. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I can see the idea of bringing him in, get him in a new situation, new environment. Maybe it brings something out of him. But I don't think as a guy that covers the Celtics, I just don't know if it makes them any different in terms of do I fear them any more than I already did? No, I think the Mikal Bridges thing moved the needle for me way more than this. And this doesn't necessarily move me at all. Again, for me, I see Minnesota side of it, and I just like the fact that they get more minutes for Naz. But from the Knicks, that front court is very thin. If Robinson gets hurt again, they're in serious trouble. I didn't like the fact that they mortgaged, the Hartenstein thing to get Bridges and bring back Anunoby. They had to kind of give up Hartenstein, and I thought Hartenstein was spectacular for them in the playoffs last year. I mean, his physicality is one thing, but he was a spectacular passer for a guy that size. So, we'll see if Cat can move the ball like that. I just think the way I know Knicks fans, he might get on their nerves very quickly with some of the stuff that he does. And I'm not sure that's a great fit for Cat, considering he's going from a market in Minnesota that's like, hey, to one of the most ruthless media markets in America. I don't know if anybody's considered that either at all, but maybe I'm weird, Kaufman. What about you? What do you think, Kaufman?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think that either team is exponentially better after the trade than it was before the trade. And so it's just sort of the longevity of the season and seeing what they look like come the playoffs. But, I'm more inclined to, I completely agree with the Naz Reid thing as far as Minnesota goes. And we saw what he did last year once he really got an opportunity. And he's just so much fun to watch. But as you noted, they don't really matter unless they get to the NBA Finals and the Celtics are there on the other side. So it'll just be, okay, are they capable of knocking off the Thunder or some of the other teams in the West that we have great respect for, and we get to just kind of sit back and enjoy that ride. But as far as the competition within the Eastern Conference, and this is where I wanted to go with you, Adam, is, what if you're looking at it, and we had this conversation a little bit with Jared Weiss when he was on with us last week. I don't know who are the biggest threats right now? Like instinctively, a lot of people would like to say, Milwaukee because Giannis, because Dame, throw them out. Like, as far as I'm concerned, throw them out. I don't like that fit. Philly, George is there now to go along with Embiid and some of the other talent that they have, but I just don't believe in Embiid, not as at that level as a winner. Obviously, he's an MVP. He's statistically, he's always going to be there. He's a great player individually. I just think he's a crappy teammate, not someone who's ever going to win in the league, at the, highest level. So does it become the Knicks by default? Am I, in your mind, as someone who covers the entire league in great depth, am I, shortchanging those other teams? Is there someone I'm leaving out?
No, I think it's the Knicks and the Sixers. I think you can flip a coin. It just depends how things work with Paul George. But I think, I know there's so many Embiid haters out there. He's so much better than everyone else on those two teams. That if he's right and the Paul George meshes and that works, I think they're more of a team to fear. Tyrese Maxey is still on the upswing. Like, that's a really, really talented team. People forget, I know it's so easy to, but like 2 years ago, if like DeAnthony Melton hits like a couple of wide open threes, there's a good chance the Sixers knock the Celtics out of the playoffs. Like, it had nothing to do with Embiid. You go back to that game 6. If a couple of those shots, even like one of those shots even goes in, there's a really good chance they're finishing them off in game 6 and everything changes. It didn't happen. The Celtics won. I get it. Like, they did what they had to do. But like, when Embiid is right, which hasn't been that often, but when he's right, he's shown he can still be a dominant force. So who knows? He's getting older too. We talked about age. Like, he's getting older. I wouldn't feel good about him playing a full season completely healthy. But if he does, and Paul George has injury concerns as well, if he stays healthy, I think their ceiling is probably the higher of the two teams. But you got to factor those things in. What's happened in the past. So I think it's Knicks, Sixers, and then Gat. I agree with you on the Bucks. They're just old and haven't really done much to get better.
And also Doc's the coach, but that's a conversation for another day. We can, Adam, before we let you go here and wrap up this show, if this can be a transitionary topic, we can start it here. We can continue it next week with whoever we have on with us, because I think we've talked a lot about Tatum and Brown individually and the whole Tatum not playing at the Olympics as much as everyone thought he should, the DNPs and Kerr and all of that, and not winning either of the MVPs, finals, or even Eastern Conference. And then Brown, obviously, his not being all NBA, any of those teams, being left off the Olympic roster, and just their individual motivations, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, this year. And, Missoula with the great quote, or Tatum, I guess, the great quote about Missoula saying that, nobody was happier that I was a DNP at the Olympics than Joe.
So I asked Joe about that the next day.
Yeah.
And he like interrupted me, like I just interrupted you, and flashed a big smile. He goes, "Oh yeah, he's right. I loved it." I'm like, all right.
I love it. I love the way the dude's wired. I hope he's the coach for life, so long as they stay competitive. He's just a great soundbite, fun to listen to, and I think he's crazy in all of the right ways. But, like I said, you wrote recently about Brown, and I wasn't at media day, but just, looking at coverage and looking at the even just like shoot around or training camp like videos that are making their way on social media. Like Brown, you talked about the whole it's I put on 10 pounds of muscle off season. Like he looks huge. I don't know if it's partially the face looks slimmer because he shaved the beard and it's more of a stubble situation as opposed to the big bushy thing, and that like in some way plays mind games with your eyes and makes the body look I have no idea, but he looks just effing shredded right now. And clearly we saw from a lot of the stuff that he put out in the offseason what he has been working on, and so he's clearly bigger. Which of these guys, if you had to pick, and hopefully the answer is both, right? But if you had to pick, with Tatum working on the mechanics of his shot and trying to get himself right a little bit with an issue that never mind the Olympics, goes back to the playoffs last year, even beyond that, actually, which of these guys do you think is better positioned mentally, physically, both, for their game going to yet another level this season?
That's a tough question. I don't think there's indications that one or the others more position dominant. I think there's probably, like, Jason has been first team All NBA for 3 years, like not so much last year, but the year before he spent a good chunk of the season as a leading MVP candidate. So if you pull out Jalen's conference final, like let's say Jalen doesn't win conference finals and finals MVP, you think the ceiling for him will be much higher. But now he's kind of, by doing that, that's a pretty big ceiling moment. By the way, oh, here I am, conference finals MVP and finals MVP. So maybe Jalen, but the thing is they don't need them to get like a lot better. There's small tweaks here and there. You mentioned Jason's shooting. I'll be curious to see, when you shooting around in front of us a few times, like his shot looked different. That hitch is gone. I put this in one of my stories. Maybe he's just workshopping something and seeing how it feels while he's shooting around after a training camp practice. And then when the games start, it looks the same, or maybe there's going to be a major adjustment. But these guys are always, focused on ways to get better and finding holes in their game. You saw with Jalen last year, like after every single practice, he would spend like 20 minutes working on his reads with like 4 assistant coaches. Very simple stuff, but he was aware the turnovers were a problem, and his abilities as a playmaker needed to improve, and it did. It got better. Is there still room for it to get better? Absolutely. But these guys are really good at kind of working to try to improve their faults.
It's like I said, we'll wrap here, and we can continue that topic next week. But just in general, in a general sports sense, it fascinates me, and it's not uncommon. It's actually very common, but it fascinates me how, whether you're talking about a batter playing with his stance in baseball and altering the way that he swings, or obviously, like you said, Tatum with the hitch in his giddy up, if you will, and looking for the mechanics of a different shot, or, maybe a quarterback throwing the ball differently. I mean, all these guys, they work on their craft in a different way, and they're constantly honing it. But it's an apples to orange things, but it'd be like, us, like, like podcasters, radio, TV people hosting a show, and all of a sudden just trying to talk differently, and and like carry ourselves in a completely different way. It's wild to me that these guys can do something largely the same way for much of their life, or at least their professional life, and take them to a certain level of success, and then just be like, yeah, it hasn't been working lately, I'm going to change it. I'm just going to like totally reinvent the way that I do this. I like I said, I'm fascinated with maybe we ought to have like Drew Hanlon on the show and get into that. If anyone could break that type of thing down, it'd be him. But
I talked to Drew 2 days ago. I wanted to tell him a story, and he, in a rare moment, said he's letting Jason talk about his shooting. He doesn't want to talk about any changes in his shooting form.
Interesting.
But I'll be curious to see what it looks like when, like, it's one thing when you're messing around after practice to be like, all right, let's try this. And then another thing when there's 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Drew Holiday's passing the ball in the corner and, like, does the muscle memory kick in at that point, or is it that shot? We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun thing to watch. But anyway, Adam Himmelsbach, like I said, check him out, obviously, on Twitter. Check, at Adam Himmelsbach. Check him out in the Globe and all of his great work there. And like I said, he's been putting stories out on Brown, on Shireman, who we didn't even really get into at all. Looking forward to seeing the, extra from the town get an opportunity with the team this year. Holy crap, the way this dude, did he look that way in college?
He's quite literally your cousin from Boston. He looks just like...
That's like a makeover. You look at the before and after pictures. He had like shaggy hair, Creighton.
That's what I mean. Like when I was watching video, not that I was like regularly watching him in college, but going back and watching highlights, different dude. That is not the guy that showed up to media day. This guy looks like he's trying to be Jeremy Renner in the town. It's unbelievable. But Himmelsbach, we always enjoy when you hop on, man. Get back to checking out Syracuse, who hopefully, as we sit here, is continuing to smack around Holy Cross. And
28-14. I've been watching out of the corner of my eye.
Ah, beautiful. Well, that's not great if you had the 28.5 point spread, but a lot of time left in the game. For M. Valenti, I am Adam Kaufman. For, of course, Himmelsbach. Check out the Celtics Beat podcast, as you always do, available to you on the CLNS Media YouTube page if you want the video, if you just want the audio. Rate, review, subscribe to wherever you get your podcast. We will talk to you again next week. Himmelsbach will be bound for not to buy Abu Dhabi. See you later.